So, willkommen zurück nach der Mittagspause. Wir sind jetzt im nächsten Themenblock. Diesmal geht es wieder um den Windows-Agenten. Wer von euch letztes Jahr auf der Konferenz war, der hat wahrscheinlich miterlebt, dass ich den Vortrag gehalten habe mit Folien, die ich vorher nicht gesehen habe. Diesmal machen wir das ein bisschen besser. Diesmal wird Sergey selbst das meiste erzählen und Marcel, die werden also zu zweit euch erzählen ein bisschen, was sich im Windows-Monitoring das letzte Jahr getan hat. Wir haben ja vor einem Jahr das Windows-Monitoring komplett erneuert und haben natürlich in diesem einen Jahr mit dem neuen Monitoring sehr viel neue Erfahrung gesammelt. Und bei dem Vote, den Martin im Slack gemacht hat, kam auch eindeutig raus, dass das wurde gewotet, das ist das wichtigste neue Feature in der Version 1.6 war das neue Windows-Monitoring. Deswegen ist das, wie man sieht, sehr wichtig, auch für uns. Und deswegen viel Spaß beim Vortrag und im Anschluss werden wir immer die Möglichkeit haben, dann eure Fragen zu beantworten. Marcel und Sergey, viel Spaß. Legt los.
Ja, dann fange ich doch direkt mal an. Matthias hat es schon gesagt, vor einem Jahr haben wir euch vorgestellt, dass wir den Windows-Agenten komplett neu entwickeln, also mit wir meine ich Sergey. Und in dem letzten halben Jahr ist natürlich auch einiges passiert. Zum einen haben wir vor einem halben Jahr den Release gehabt von der 1.6, wo das Ganze auch dann wirklich in der stabilen Version gelandet ist. Und haben in der Zeit dann auch noch natürlich einiges gelernt. Deswegen werde ich euch jetzt hier im ersten Punkt mal ein bisschen nahelegen oder erzählen, was haben wir denn so gelernt, was ist passiert, was ist uns aufgefallen, welche Probleme hat es gegeben und auch nochmal ein paar Erklärungen, wie das Ganze zu verstehen ist. Und in Teil 2 und 3 wird euch dann Sergey zum einen erzählen, was wir geplant haben für die 1.7 in den Windows-Agenten und natürlich auch nochmal einen Ausblick geben, was dann ab der 1.8 oder besser gesagt nach der 1.7 passieren wird oder soll. Gehen wir also direkt rein.
Okay, so let's get started. We're going to get started with our first point. So overall, that's the first resume after the first year. It's pretty positive, to be honest. At the end of the day, we have less than 80 support tickets ever since we started with 1.6, which is surprisingly little, to be honest. And out of those 80 support tickets, I would say there are 10 tickets or 10 bug fixes that were created in there specifically for the new Windows Agent. So not the old one, but the current one. And if there were any problems, it was mainly always the same 3 or 4 topics that appeared and that happened, and the most common 3 that were also discussed in the forum as well. And I want to discuss them in more detail. One of them is how do you migrate properly from 1.5 to 1.6? And the second thing is how does this agent work? And what's different about it? And the third thing is what is happening with the agent updater and the antivirus scanner that creates false positives. Migration from 1.5 to 1.6. So the typical questions were always the same questions, basically. So I've installed the 1.6, and why is 1.5 still there? Why wasn't it deleted? And when am I supposed to delete it? Do I keep it? Am I supposed to keep it? Or once I have deleted it, why wasn't everything deleted? And at the end of the day, I can say these insecurities are really based on one thing, which is that you have a big expectations. Of course, a lot of things are changing. Some things aren't changing. For example, the installation process is actually almost the same. There's only one option that's different. Other than that, it's exactly the same. It's basically identical. However, the only option is different, and that one option is kind of tricky, and that deletes the old agent. So how does this migration happen in real life? Well, we have the installation of the new agent, so either directly via MSE file if you want to do it manually, or you have to do it manually. So it could also be script, or it could also be baked and with a signed agent as well, where it's doing the update by itself. However, default the legacy agent is not being deleted. However, instead, the old agent is going to be deactivated, but it's still on the system. system. And of course, there's a big benefit that comes with it, which is that in the case of something going wrong in that migration process, you still have the original data and you can still access that. And you can actually seamlessly switch back by then deinstalling the new agent and activating the old agent. So it's a safety feature, basically, which still exists specifically for the migration in order to not lose any data. But if you are sure that everything worked properly, because, for example, you've tried it on a couple of test systems, etc., and they are representative and these test systems worked well, then you can start to automatically delete the old agent, not manually, but automatically. And that can be either done directly with the deinstaller, with the option that we've discussed, or via the agent bakery by setting a rule and just saying that this agent should be deleted. The uninstaller is then going to be filled in, and the old agent is going to be deleted, and the data is going to be migrated. That's happening anyways, and the plugins are going to be copied. Now, in real life, so far, that is something that is not sort of the whole story. First of all, you may have to do some manual work as well, and that is something that is not directly clear, because if you set a firewall rule, for example, you may have to adapt that. On top, you see one line, how you can set a firewall rule like that for a new service or a new rule. But if we do the migration, if we use the existing firewall rule and then adapt that. So that's the example right under it. It's a lot shorter, it's easier to remember, and it's just faster to type in too. So those are screenshots from our handbook, so from our manual. You can also just copy it from there and use it. The second thing is, if you have installed the old agent, it's possible that some files are going to remain there. It's not going to be deleted. That does usually only happen, and also for all other programs that holds true for Linux or Windows, that happens if there are files that are not in the that don't belong in the installer. For example, in this case, because we have some plugins there or configuration folder or files. And these files would then have to be deleted manually so that you then have everything gone at the end of the day. And all of that process is also something that you can find in the manual. So in this case, it would be chapter 4.3, how do I migrate from the old agent to the new agent? However, of course, since there were some insecurities, and from our experience, those were some of the most common problems, we just thought we're going to explain it again. And that's why I'd also like to tell you, just as a second thing, that would just be the architectural differences between the two agents. Because they really are the main thing where they are really different, the old and the new agent. So typical questions were, for example, what is the difference between the old and the new agent? Because that wasn't something that was quite clear a year ago. I mean, we did know about a few things already, but of course, a lot of things have changed by the time we released it. And also, where do I add my custom configurations? Can I adapt them? Where are the plugins that need to be executed? Where do I even store my configuration, etc.? And what is the program data Checkmk agent? Where does that come from all of a sudden? And why do I sometimes not find it where I want to find it? And in order to do that, we're going to have to look at the following. We're going to have to look at what the history is behind the Windows agent, and also what we actually couldn't do with our old agent because we didn't know any better, or because there wasn't a necessity to do so. So the old agent is really not doing the best practices that Windows has since XP or 2003, which is that even in this case, the program and the user data are in separate. So before the version of 1.6, it was the same one. So we have the problem if we deinstall it, then maybe not everything is going to be installed, and then you have to manually work on it again and separately delete files. Of course, that's unfortunate, but that was the case for 1.5. Plus, if I wanted to adjust the agent later on, I never have the transparency in terms of what was adjusted or adapted and what actually was part of the installation. So have I actually added things myself, because that's also possible. And all of these things we wanted to address, plus the best practice of the things those as well. So we just wanted to follow that, to separate that. What does that mean? It means that in 1.6, you're going to find all the installation files of the application in the Checkmk service, and also all the configuration data, log data, and all of that. That's in the program data Checkmk agent. So that's one thing. Okay, and then also we've noticed that in 1.5, the format is not as complex as we wanted. So we had the Checkmk ini before, we had the local ini. Most of you didn't even know about them. And in this case, we also had the structure that was pretty flat in this case. So we could define a parameter, but we couldn't really set any data structures in order to do complex things. And at the same time, we weren't able to see, okay, what's from the bakery, what's built in, what's default, etc. And in 1.6, we're addressing that. So that means that the format is now YAML, and YAML, we still have a classic key value pair, but we can also, because of the YAML structure, we can actually set data structures that are quite complex in order to really make it where the configuration options, which are very complex, they would still work. Plus, you can also see it in this example right here. We are splitting it into 3 configuration files. So on the one hand, we can always make visible what's default, which is the Checkmk YAML, what's from bakery, and also what have I actually adapted myself. And of course, I also have to search for it or create it myself, but the Checkmk user YAML is just part of it right from the beginning. Now, last problem that I have to address at this point in time is regarding the execution of plugins and also the information itself. So in 1.5, what happened was that the Linux plugin, you always had to reach the server, and you then had to use HTTP. If you know that trick, you had to download the plugin, or you had to copy it and then manually copy it again, etc. And of course, that is quite annoying. And at the same time, again, this is the configuration of the plugins with the ini format that was quite complicated, and you had to use different keys, key value pairs that were loosely connected in different orders, etc. So it wasn't very convenient. And if you now look at the new version 1.6, we definitely adjusted that so that, first of all plugins that are available for the Windows agent are actually delivered with the software. So you don't have to address the Checkmk server in order to get any plugins, but instead it was enough to actually get the plugin and then copy it to the program, and you save it under plugins, and then it's going to be executed as well. So it's a lot more transparent. You can see what kind of plugins are being executed, and also you have transparency what kind of plugins you actually have available. And the whole thing is then also under the data Checkmk agent and the corresponding plugins, or generally under Checkmk/agent. And this program that you see here overall, and I still owe you that, that's not visible by default because it is really something in order to save user data that were actually executed by system programs. And now, of course, we recognize that that is not necessarily helpful if it's only described in the manual. as I've described it down here. Of course, there are different chapters that are addressing, but maybe we have to talk more about or have more transparency where these problems may arise, and that's why we thought maybe we should do the result page, the results page of the installer. We should have a description of what you can find where and what it's meant to do in order to just create more transparency. Okay, and the last topic, that's the false positives and the antivirus scanner. So what's the problem? Well, hopefully most of you haven't experienced that problem yet, but it happens again and again. So the antivirus scanner produces false positives quite often, and that's based on the Pi installer. We're controlling that in CollabWatch or the Checkmk update agent, and this Pi installer or these packages that are created from that are recognized as a threat, and that's why they initiate warning, or they may even be deleted, worst case scenario. The problem is that us being Checkmk, Tribe 29, we can't address that because we don't know some of the installers, and that's why this problem is going to be existing until we stop using Pi installer. So what can we do as a quick fix? Well, first of all, we're now encrypting installation packages so that the antivirus scanner only intervenes at a point in time and gives you the false positive where you can still react. And the second thing is that the exceptions are then also generated and can be set so that it's not creating these false positives anymore. But that's just a quick fix and workaround, and it's really not a problem that we've only experienced with the 1.6 agent. And of course, this requires a real solution, a true solution, a real solution. And I already spoiled that. It can only work if the Pi installer can be avoided, or if Pi installer are solving the problem, but that's very unlikely. And of course, that is then going to happen with version 1.7. And in what way that's going to happen, that is something that Sergey about. Hello. My name is Sergey. I am in charge of the Windows development, and if you have any problems with that, you can ask me anytime and contact me anytime. I'm going to tell you what we are doing with Agent 1.7 and what we are going to do with the next generation. Okay, what you see here, this is just a short summary of the features, and this is how the Windows agent has. So we have Python, we also have automatic firewall, we also have the possibility to change the plugins, and we are also improving the deinstallation. Okay. So native Python plugin support. The most important new thing of this agent is just the built-in Python 3.8, and there are different reasons why we have this Windows agent. We have the standardized Python version that we've added. First of all, plugins. Developers receive the possibility to actually create platform plugins, and if there are problems with operating systems, etc., so they're not going to be distracted by that. Again, you are going to get one standard environment where you can write your own plugins. So of course, this is for every version of Windows, and it's available on any host. And of course, this is always for Windows too. Secondly, we have the Pi installer. The Pi installer is going to be deleted from the distribution. And because of that, potential problems with antivirus software is going to be gone, and the Pi installer is the main source for false positive results. And plugins that are written on Python, their performance is going to be increased, specifically those of importance. And there are not going to be any side effects anymore, and you probably know about the problems with Tampa and May under. Okay. Thirdly, it is important to mention that our Python is not going to prevent you from using other pre-installed Python versions. And the agent Python is not something that's a software that's installed under Windows. It is specifically meant to not interrupt the work of other applications. In addition to that, the user can choose which Python they actually want to use to execute their own plugin or script. But if they actually need host Python 2 or 3, that's not a problem. Please go ahead and do that. But Checkmk is always using its own Python. Okay, so what else can I add? The plugins that we have developed under Python are only going to be having the ending checkmk.py, and the development and support process is going to be more transparent and faster, and you're going to see the code, and it's not going to be a strange file anymore that was unpacked and then did something and then probably created some issues. And if you use Python on one host, that's good. So it's really just one switch in bakery. But that's nothing new. We are trying to ensure that there are not going to be any questions. Python, of course, is going to have all the necessary updates. In addition to that, we are planning on Python then fully support that if the bakery is no longer available, or if the bakery is used as a raw addition, for example. And my last point is, of course, it can be combined very easily with PowerShell, and also you can still use that without any limitations. Okay. Next slide. Talking about the firewall. This new feature was developed in order to have an elegant and I would say an optimized version for the Windows firewall problem. And as you know, the firewall is an integral part of the Windows safety system and has to work 100% of the time. But in this case, there could be a problem. The new Windows agent can actually have a configured firewall and it can break through that. So, of course, you could at this point also just do that before you open the agent with 1.7. However, let's say that you have 100 hosts and you have to write one script and you have to check it and then execute it, and you have to make sure that the script has worked. And what's even more important is you have to make sure that the script works properly. And human error can happen quite quickly. However, the price you have to pay is quite high. And I forgot to mention that your ports can also change and programs can be deinstalled. And your firewall is going to be full of unnecessary and sometimes dangerous rules. And in 1.7 agent, we are offering you a very simple solution. As a standard, the agent is configured and it's configuring your firewall right after it's installed on the right port and also on the right file. And the system works perfectly. Of course, at least that's what it looks like right now. But I can definitely tell you that there are no weaknesses. If you or your administrator, for whatever reason, doesn't want the automated firewall, then you can also turn this off with the push of one button in the bakery. However, I wouldn't recommend doing that. I would like to point out some positives. The firewall is always correct. No administrative intervention is required. One rule, and after it's being deinstalled, the agent, the firewall is as good as new. And some drawbacks, there aren't any, most likely. Okay, execute plugins with specific permission. Agent 1.7 is going to have a very interesting possibility, which is making it where every plugin can be executed, including virtual accounts. So that is going to be an improvement. And the reason is that monitoring of some resources when it comes to using one administrative account is not possible or complicated. And overall, I can say using administrator rights is not good. In 1.7, there are two options available. The first option is having a local name, and in this case, the agent is going to have a specific temporary and invisible user that can be set for this group and then executed in his name. And this method is completely secure because it doesn't pass on the password at all. However, I would say that this method is bad for Active Directory. The user group, in this case, needs to be local. And the second method is having one username and one password and creating that. So there are no limitations for that method. However, please be aware that a password is going to be an open form, so it's going to be saved on the server, and it's going to be sent out in a file. A typical use case would be monitoring databases or network share monitoring. And usually it is quite enough to know the group name, for example, users, and that is going to be sufficient. Okay. Now, the removal process. This improvement is something that was actually done because we had a lot of questions in regards to how do I remove everything or what is happening with my files after I remove everything. And we decided that we actually had to adapt the removal process in line with the requirements. And now, the removal process as a standard removes all the different files and folders that belong to agents, namely plugins, configuration data, and zip files, etc. And this solution covers 90% of the cases. And that is definitely an improved version of the 1.6 agent. However, in 1.7, you can also delete everything or remove everything. So for one complete new installation, you have to fully remove all the old files. And this is definitely a common case, full removal or something like that. And of course, you can also decide that you don't want to remove it. That option is mainly used for one reason, which is a later analysis. If something goes wrong, for example, the agent is being removed and everything that's left over is going to be packaged and then sent to the developers. Okay, this is the end of the slide, but we still have an additional interesting feature for our users, and that's the possibility to use the Windows Agent, the service, directly from the bakery, and it can be controlled from there. And the full list of settings is not set yet, and that's why we would like to get your feedback on that. And of course, we can really adapt almost everything. Exceptions are the service name. We don't want to change that because the installation program would have to be recreated. So that's the end of that. This is everything for 1.7. Do you have any questions? Nope. Okay, so if we start with questions, Sergey, can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you very well. Okay, so Jan Niklas actually has a question about the Windows Firewall. Isn't it possible to use the Windows Firewall and just adapting that while you're installing it with the chatbot during installation? But the way I understand it, that's exactly the plan, right? That's a good idea. That's a good idea. I'm going to have to note that down. Okay, yes, it is possible. Of course it is. Okay, so the installer can say, okay, I just want to set the firewall rule. Yeah, that's a good idea, specific for people without bakery. Yes, we can actually do this feature in 1.7. We can add that, yes. But right now you can't. I think even for beginners, that would be very interesting, right? For 1.6, we don't have that feature, but for 1.7, we have it in bakery, but I can do that. That's not a problem. A roadmap, I'm not defining that. I'm definitely not defining that. But it's not a problem. It's not a problem to do that. The idea is definitely very good. Okay. Benedict Bayer has a question. He says, wouldn't it make more sense that bake MSI files only contain plugins that they're really used at the end? For manual installation, it absolutely makes sense to include all plugins, but for baked agents, I think it's different. Is that really the case? Is it really true that even baked agents, they come with all plugins? I would say that is probably the easiest method for the Windows installer. It's not difficult to remove in the baked version these plugins and remove them from plugin files. But I would say that our developers, well, we're packaging plugins. We always do. How big are the plugins? All plugins together? A couple hundred kilobytes. It's not that big. So I really don't think it's about the size or anything like that. It's not about the size of the files. It's just a good idea in principle in order to have baked agents and only have them with plugins from the bakery. But the default config is what it is right now. So usually we have problems with MSI installer because that actually has some limited options. And that's just a technical situation. Okay, so now there's a question from Dominic Leitner. Are firewall rules, when you're deinstalling it, are they going to be removed? They have to, of course. Okay, good. That was a quick answer. Yeah. If you don't remove them, that's an error. Write a ticket and I will do it. As we know, for the Windows Agent, there aren't any bugs, right? Not many, at least. Yeah, no bugs is not a software. Jan Philipp Henkel is asking, is the functionality possible to restart the agent from the Checkmk server? So what he's saying is that you can actually do it from the server. That's a question for you. Do we have a channel from the server to the agent? If we don't have a channel from the agent to the agent, then no, we can't do that. So that's just the architecture that it comes down to. And the answer is no. So I would say it's difficult. So no, my answer is no. So maybe in the future, but as of right now, no. I don't have the possibility to push data from the server to the agent. The only thing that would be possible is possibly using the agent updater. So in the status, for example, when you send that back, you could maybe do it. Yeah, possibly. True. That is one possibility. And the Windows updater would have to do the update of the agent. But yeah. Okay. Michael Frank is asking, are third-party libraries supported for Checkmk Python? So the Python that comes with the agent, can I also implement third-party libraries? So if I want to actually develop a plugin that requires a library, can I do that? That's a good point. We're planning on doing that. That's definitely in my pipeline. I'm definitely thinking that we should have custom user packages that we could add. And the user library or the Python library can be like a user custom package. As of right now, we don't have such a possibility or a feature like that. However, in the future, we'll definitely have that because we definitely have to do things like that. That's 100% certain. That's the custom package. And we should definitely do that after Windows custom plugins from the bakery, not just manual.
Okay. Dann ist noch eine Frage von Jens Dunkelberg. Wann können wir den neuen Agent testen?
Okay. All right, there's another question by Jens Dunkelberg. When can we test the new agent? Do we have a version already? We're going to have to ask Lars, but from my point of view, I would say starting from today. But it'd probably be best to ask Lars. He should answer how and when our clients can test 1.7. Maybe in June. Okay, Matthias Handler is asking, is there going to be an alert handler for Windows primarily to restart services? Can you ask me again? Is there going to be an alert handler? The Linux agent has the possibility, or with the bakery, you can set alert handlers. For example, if a service crashed, for example, so you can automatically restart that. And Windows didn't offer that so far. Is that something that they're planning on doing, or is that something that's happening? Well, we have the same possibility or the same functionality from the bakery in 1.7. We could actually do restart services automatically. And because I asked to send in ideas to see how we can improve the agent. So Windows has their own Windows services. And with the bakery in 1.7, this service could also automatically start if something went wrong. So that is all we have as of right now. There's no other feature. I think at this point in time, we have something in Treasures right now, where you can already do a remote alert handler, and that is just not as easy with Windows as it is with Linux, because even with Windows is just something new. It's something that was integrated recently, and on the other hand, WinRM, for example, is just very difficult to access, and it's not very easy. And that's the main reason why we don't have an alert handler that's included. But it's definitely something that could be done, potentially. And we could definitely do it, I'm sure. But first of all, probably some limitations in terms of the Windows version where it would work, and then also not without a lot of work. Okay, Dominic Leitner also has a question about the encryption of the account, which you mentioned earlier. You said that the passwords in the second case are not going to be encrypted. So why are the account data of the service account, why are they handed out and they're not encrypted? Or did I misunderstand you? Could you maybe say more about that? What did you mean by that? The authentication data, if you want to use with Active Directory. Well, our plugins are going to be executed by other accounts, so we should send credentials. And right now, we have some possibilities to send credentials in an open form: name, username, and password. So that's a security gap. That's very obvious. If we use group names, we don't send out a password. But in any case, as of right now, we have to make sure that our password has to be sent out in an open form. There's no encryption right now for passwords. Well, of course, we could also add encryption, but we need different channels. So we do need a channel in both directions. Now we only have a channel in one direction, with the exception of the agent update.
Christian Wirtz hat eine Frage mit 4 votes. The included plugins are only the plugins that you provide, and they are not.
Okay, Christian Wirtz has another question. The included plugins are only the plugins that you provide, and they are not big. We also always thought that our own plugins would come with it, but that's not the case. I didn't understand that. So he's saying the plugins that we are providing, they're not very big, but if he wants to create his own plugins, or if he has created them already, they can be bigger, right? So it's really about whether or not the bakery is delivering all plugins or not. Let's say he created his own agent plugins and they're on the Checkmk server. Then, of course, it'd be interesting if they would be delivered everywhere or not, because they can be bigger.
I didn't get that. What is it with the plugins? Well, it's basically the same question we already had. Right now, the bakery includes all the plugins. Yes and no. Delivered like a template or a treasury with all the plugins included. You can use these plugins or not use them, it doesn't matter. These plugins are the platform for future groups, or you'll have to analyze them in the future, because real plugins for monitoring are being delivered through the bakery. These automatic program files, these are reference plugins. Okay. So it would be possible that I can only deliver my own plugins where I need them. Is that right? Yes. It is possible, but it's not the default setting. Because usually we only use plugins from distribution. But for different users, we can patch or change this distro. And then it can deliver new user plugins onto Windows. Yeah, Philip Henkel has a question whether the Windows agent in version 1.7 is compatible with Checkmk version 1.6. So can the agent be newer than the Checkmk service? By default, this should be the case. Right now, it's compatible in both ways. So an old agent with the new server, that always works. So I can update the Windows agent first, and that will still work. That's great. Okay. We've got 3 more minutes. And I have another slide for the future roadmap. Oh, there's a slide. Yes, yes, of course. Please go ahead. Let me please go to Thomas' question for a second, if I may. If you think the timing works, then yeah, sure. So Thomas, ich install migrate from. So if I want to install from an old agent to a new agent, and he's doing it on several hundred hosts, is that correct that this is the best practice to first install the new agent, keep the old one, and then do the installation again, and then delete the old one. So to do the installation twice. No, that's actually a misunderstanding. The best practices have to be is to do the migration on a number of hosts, keeping the old one, testing the new one, seeing if the configuration of plugins and data worked. And then once you've done this on a representative number of hosts, so all hosts that are of different types, then I can do the automation, go into automation and do an automatic installation. And I can say during installation, the old agent should also be removed. That is an automatic step. Okay, as we have 1 more minute, let's talk about the roadmap. First of all, I would like to clarify that this is not a final defined roadmap. Currently, it's just a range of ideas for development. The main focus in the next version is on expanding monitoring possibilities in Windows. We plan monitoring for Windows-specific systems like Hyper-V, Microsoft 365, Exchange, Hyper-V. For example, we have to improve on Exchange, Office 365, and also partly IIS has to be added. Second main focus is the cross-platform monitoring for Oracle DB2, MySQL, and so on. To have an excellent monitoring level for Windows, which we already have for Linux. Of course, these new plugins will be written in Python. Python for the agent was developed just for this purpose. It should be clarified that the plugins are not written for Windows, but adapted for Windows. And here we would also hear from you. We would like to hear from you which types of plugins you would like to see for Windows, which are the most interesting for you. Of course, we will consider your requests. And a few final words. Currently, it appears that the technological foundation of the agent is modern and stable. As my colleague said, we are getting a low number of tickets that are based on development, and we can really handle these in our free time. There are no particular problems with performance or stability. We are on the same page that the agent is a good piece of software. What can you expect from the next version of the agent? For example, 1.8. Currently, we can offer a clear improvement of diagnostics and a certain improvement in performance. Diagnosis allows us to keep on finding problems quickly, and our performance, even if it's not critical, can be improved slightly by removing bottlenecks. Now, about the agent features that need to be considered. It is possible, for example, to replace Open Monitor to Reprint Monitor, to change the status local learn time, and to expand Windows local service. And without a doubt, we will look at all your recommendations for improving on the agent. And finally, I'd like to say that your ideas are very important for us. Your ideas give us speed and direction where we're going. We are available over Slack or email or phone, whatever you like. If there are further questions, we have a question session now. Yeah, that's future and roadmap. No, Marcel, show us the final slide, please. Because there are parallels in the other room. We're basically talking about this. Is this right? Yes, there is a Q&A in the second room. And can I see the other slide? Yes. So if there are questions, just switch the stage to stage 2, and in 10 minutes we will go on here, the Oracle Monitoring at Swisscom with Daniel Röttgermann, our old friend. So thank you, and we see you again here on the stage in 10 minutes.